Morning, gents. Welcome to another session of the Thrive and Survive Research Hub. Today we have a very special guest here, Karabo Letlape. How are you doing, my brother?
Yeah, see, can I say, man, blessed and very much favored. So really, I'm good. Beautiful Saturday, and thanks for having me, guys. Really big fan of the show as well, and so really keen. I'm really happy to be part of it.
Amen, amen. Alex, how are you doing?
Feeling beautiful, T. Very excited
Yeah.
for another special guest. Yeah, I can't wait to pick into his story.
Oh, perfect. So as you know, Karabo, today we're going to dive into your mind and just find out, some of the golden nuggets you've picked up along the journey of your life. And the first
Mm.
question that I just wanted to go into was, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and most importantly, how you ended up doing what you're doing?
Geez, that's a quite loaded question, but like let's just break it down a bit. I think about myself, I think the fundamental bedrock of it all is my faith in my church. I'm Catholic, born and raised in the church. And I think, I think in Proverbs, I'm paraphrasing it, but it's the fear of God at the beginning of all wisdom and knowledge, right? Once I understood that, and in a truest sense, Alex, honestly speaking, that is possibly one of the most realist and truest statements that will ever be out there. I think once I understood that, I understood who I am as a person, right? Went on then to obviously study business management, and I did a double major as well with marketing on the side, which is fantastic times as well. And yeah, and then from there, how I got into sort of the education side of it as well. So again, it ties into the whole Christianity thing. Is that I actually got this random. It was from my mother, and she plays a big role in my life as T knows. She's been exec in many years on some massive blue chip companies, and throughout her business connections, she got a WhatsApp from a friend with like a link to a job application, which wasn't meant to be sent to her, by the way. It just happened she sent it to her by mistake. And then yeah, and it just fit me to the T, in terms of the role. Because prior to getting that sort of link, I used to work at my mom's company. It's co-owned with my cousin and my family. It's called Malichaba Human Capital. It's a recruitment company for HR, payroll, all that kind of stuff. They had a massive contract with Gibela, the railway agency as well there, and they were doing bursary administration. So I used to run that for my family. So I travel around TVET colleges looking to help our students and give out financial aid and scholarships. So I'm traveling to the Eastern Cape. All 9 provinces were all under my belt at the time. So I was running that for some time as well, and also managed a bit of Tammy Taylor, which obviously comes to the question in terms of my sales experience as well there with my friend Carvelo and my business partner as well there. So that was a mixture of things of where really things really started for me. Then I applied at this education consulting company. It's called Crimson Education. As a sales development rep in the beginning, really junior, not knowing much, but just knowing what I do know, right? And then yeah, just by chance we applied, got the job, and yeah, and then I guess we'll go into it in as well, but Crimson. But that's just how my story really is. That's how I started up and keep on going from there.
Jeez. And I hope you don't mind me asking, but obviously, I mean, you're significantly younger than me. When did this switch happen? When did you move from a family business to corporate? How old were you at that stage?
Oh, geez, I remember, yeah, straight out of varsity, I took a year off, and I did like a post-grad study as well while I was on that year off. So I would say, I think I left my family business about 4 years ago, somewhere around about there. With the idea that I do intend on going back, but no, the big thing is this, right? And what I had to learn is that to a certain extent that I have to make my own name outside of my family name, right? I have to be able to fly out with my own wings. But most importantly, actually, T, is actually the fact that where I am now, I get to meet high net worth individuals and make business contacts through them. These are contacts that I could potentially one day take back to my family business, right? Where I said, oh, I worked with Mr. Eba, who is I don't know, runs waste call, whatever it is, and you want some administration work done. Now I can come back and say, oh yeah, then you build those sort of relationships, right, with your clients. And I think as well, to a large extent, that's where I think sales actually moves towards in a greater conversation. I don't think the way we're moving in terms of sales as a process is built on the product or service, but rather than building relationships with the clients. All right. You sell on relationships on the product or service that you currently have. And I think that's where I see a lot of people kind of going to go wrong, especially if you're new in the sales game as well. So the move for me was to actually build my own networks outside of my family so that it can benefit my family in the long run.
Yeah.
So that's just when I decided to actually make that jump outside and just to grow, right? Be my own Letlape and then go back to them and then later on, but so far it's been great. And like I said, that jump, it was big too, like don't get me wrong, right? Not a lot of
Yeah.
people were happy that I made the jump. They're like, why are you leaving? This is what we're building as a family. We've had this thing for over, I mean, that comes over about 15 years old. It's massive now, but
Mhm.
I just thought to myself that I want to come back better, but really to add value. I think it's the key thing
Sure.
in any organization that you work in, even a group of friends, that you want to be there to add value and not be a liability, right? So yeah, that's when the jump happened for me. I'd say 2 years after I did my postgrad studies, or a year, I left.
Wow. Wow. And I like the word that you use there, right? Relationships,
Mm.
particularly in
Mm.
sales. And I think life is about sales. So of course we've got occupations and stuff that we do where we try to sell a product or service or sell your skills and talents. But the reality is that at the end of the day, people buy into you, how you treat. And like, I mean, a very good example I'll use is like, obviously, like I'm doing a lot of construction and I've obviously come across a lot of contractors. And through those contractors, I've also met a lot of suppliers. And like, I was very shocked to understand that there are thousands of toilet seat companies, right? All exactly the same product. Toilet seat barely even has a brand, to be quite honest with you. There's a few, luxury brands out there. But the ones that do the most successful are the ones that have the account managers or the team with the best relationships. And that's what maintains the business. So I like how you touched on relationships because I think relationships allow for you to expand beyond the conversation. And it ultimately adds on to the hero's journey. Like what you're doing now is the hero's journey, right? You've left your family business to go and pursue a specific agenda. However, as you come back as the hero returning home, you'll be able to leverage off those relationships for the benefit of your coming. So yeah, I love the word relationship there. Alex?
Well said. I was also thinking the same thing with the hero's journey there too. Karabo, something you said there stood out to me where you mentioned a gap year. I was hoping we could maybe dig into that a bit more because I feel like the concept of a gap year is very underrated. You know, taking some time to pick a direction for your life and not rushing into things is very important because a lot of the times
Mm.
we get pushed in these different directions. You kind of get on a treadmill and you're locked in and you just focus on progressing and progressing and progressing. When you took a gap year, what was the like circumstances around that and what did you learn from it?
Yeah. No, thanks, Alex. I mean, look, I think, and you're right, and it's something that it's funny enough. A lot of my kids that I work with who study abroad, and we'll talk about that a bit later, do take gap years. All right,
Mm.
and the reason for it as well, and that's something that I'm very grateful for, is that I was in a position whereby I wasn't forced into the work environment. I was able to kind of discover, and what you said as well is you're on the ball, by the way, Alex, is that you get forced into like a one direction or one industry, and you kind of just like pushed into it. Fortunately, in that gap year, I was allowed to explore things like, as I was saying, is to manage and run a Tammy Taylor, the one in Grey Isle with one of my business partners, Cabello.
Mm.
I was able to explore some, I say, financial. At the time, it was more like around like some financial trading tools that I used to do as well. I gave me an opportunity to kind of do a bit of everything that I wanted to do and see what direction do I fall in love with naturally. And naturally, sales came to me. And
Amazing.
one yeah, so that's what I use that gap year for me, honestly, is that I just did a bit of everything. I worked with the family business for a little bit just to see what I wanted to do there as well. Is it what I'm keen for? And again, it's something that I'm really blessed for, and I thank God for every day because I know that not everyone has that opportunity. You're right.
No.
We come from a society whereby really out of varsity, you've got to go into a labor market because you've got to start supporting the family.
Yeah.
And fortunately, like I said, having that safety net of my family, my parent, my mother, was able to say, look, Karabo, you can take this year to kind of explore, find your feet, see what you want to do, and then go in there. I think a really important thing is that, and I think T, you said a lot about sales for me, is that I genuinely would like to see, and people that I do help, I do have some young kids that I obviously talk to who are in matric and going to the first year, that I genuinely like to push the idea of out of varsity, you really try aim for a sales job as one of your first jobs that you do get. Because unfortunately, there's no book that I've read, and I'm reading strategic management. I've read all the sort of books as well that teaches you the concept of sales. Sales is not something that you can really, it's through experience that you actually learn sales. So you learn certain aspects and attributes of ourselves very, very important. So when you're approaching a client, understand is that, and I see it a lot of happen as well, is that when someone approaches me, now that I know what I know from sales, that they don't like to ask what are my pain points, what do I actually need? They're going on the assumption that they're going to just sell me this product or service. And it happens a lot with like cold calls and maybe like insurance kind of a thing as well, where they haven't taken the time to understand actually what do I need? I don't need life insurance, right? I might need is like an RA, but you haven't asked me about that. So I'm not going to engage you on it, right? And it's very the things that I tell my team. And when I'm doing, and we're hard not doing sales trainings, that I say to guys like, when I jump on a call with the clients or I meet a client, really my first line is really going to be, Alex, what do you want to gain out of this meeting? What's important for us to cover that you feel that will give you value coming out of this meeting? Now I know what you need, right? If it's from a consulting point of education, they might say, look, well, we need help with SAT tutoring. I don't know what the SAT is. Now I know, right? At least coming out of this meeting, if I can really elaborate and explain what SATs are and how it works, I can get somewhat of a deal out of that, get a contract to tutor them in SAT. So that is some things that are really things that aren't taught in textbooks, that I've learned. And look, and I learned it through trial and error, by the way, right? And this is what it is, it's trial and error. You go there, sometimes the client says, oh, I have to think about this. You're like, oh, maybe somewhere I wasn't clear enough, or maybe I was coming in a bit too aggressive. I was doing most of the talking, the client wasn't talking as much. That's where I feel that, it's just learning on the job is what really sales is. But I really do encourage guys, if you are listening to this podcast as well, from a young age to, you said it very, very well. Sales is something that you do in your whole life, right? When you go for an interview, you're selling yourself, right? You're selling your expertise, your knowledge. When you're in the job itself, you are really are just trying to gain value and just sell the product or service and build those relationships, those communications. I mean, I've got clients who I know very well. I'm not going to sign with me this now because the child is still young, but they'll sign with me in 2 years' time when the child's in grade 10. I know T that you're going to reach out to me as well when the babies are at the right age in grade 10 to say, yo, Karabo, how do I go abroad now? What are the next steps? So can you see, like, we've been building this relationship over years, and that's what it really comes down to at the end of it. But to your question as well, I think like taking that gap year to find yourself if you have that opportunity, I really encourage you to do it, and do it also while you're young.
Yeah.
Right. Do it while you're young, while you got no or limited responsibilities, limited liabilities, where there's a safety net. So if you do fail, right, you fail softly, right? I think Les Brown says, if you fall, try land on your back, because if you can look up, you can actually get up. So when you do try those things, that's what the key thing is. And I realize people in their 20s now, they're so used to the culture, guys. They're so trapped in the culture of, alcohol and clubbing that you're wasting these prime years.
Yeah.
Right. You really got to figure it out, and trying a lot of things now while you're young, building that network, building your portfolio and building your skills is really, really important. So yeah, try a bit of everything, and then you'll find your niche and what that's going to be as well in there is what I'd say. That's what the gap year was for me about. Alex.
I love this because one thing as well is you were very intentional with your gap year. So a lot of people think gap year is, oh, let me go travel. I don't have anything against traveling, but I'm just saying, or they just say, let me go fuck around, basically. Both you and T actually got into the working world at a very young age. And I think that it speaks to your development at such a young age as well. Because if you think about success, right, there's no shortcuts. It takes time. It is what it is. The sooner you start, the sooner you actually put that work in and you figure it out. Like you say with sales, the sooner you start. Sales is a skills-based thing. It's not a technical thing. So you can't force and cheat the skill. You can learn it as quickly as a person can by being efficient, but you have to take that time. So that's a big thing I want to emphasize for anyone listening on the gap year concept is you have to be intentional. You can't just take it and say, I'm going to find myself. It's like, no, you've got to put yourself out there, test some things, try it out, and see what sticks, essentially.
Mm,
Oh,
I think too, I mean, Alex, what you said there's so profound, bro. And I really love it because it's like, it takes, you've got to earn your stripes, right? It takes 12 years to be 12 years old. So
yeah.
if you're going to go out there into the market and you want to pick up sales in 2 months, it's not going to work like that. You're going to have to deal with rejection. I know you know very well, right? You know, we have a deal going on and it's just not coming together. There's always going to be rejection. There's always going to be those deals whereby you feel like, oh, this client should have signed, but they didn't. What went wrong in my sales process? And there's also going to be things that are cyclic. To understand that sales by nature is cyclical. You're going to go through periods whereby you're going to be on the highest of highs, deals are closing, clients have got money, it's really, really nice. Then you go through like a really low period. So you need to understand those, and it's different from market to market. I'm not too sure how to work for you guys, T, but for me, I know around like October, November, December, it's generally slow because we have exams, matric exams or overall exams. Then families go on holiday. So they aren't really trying to have those sort of conversations yet. But come January, it's kind of like, okay, my child is now in grade 11 or in matric. We must start thinking about, university applications. Let's get this ball rolling. Then we have this high trough. So those are experiences that you need to gain. But the only way, like you're saying, Alex, is like you've got to be intentional what you're doing, right?
For sure.
Taking a gap year, it should not be about kicking about and doing nothing, right? It's about, okay, maybe you've got like 4 industries that you're keen to tap into. How are you going to get into them? That's a very big question, all right? Do you have business connections? Are you going to be on LinkedIn, being active in your profile? Just being out there and intentional what you want to do. And that's probably one of the best advice. I mean, it's what we do with our kids as well. So when our kids are in gap years, and the key thing for universities as well is that if you take a gap year, they want to know what have you done in that gap year. Have you done extracurricular activities like a job shadowing, work experience, or have you built a project that you're working on?
Yeah.
I remember working with this student. His name is Abang, Hilton College kid. He got into UPenn. When we was on his holidays and his gap years, we used to go to underprivileged communities like Alexandra, Mamelodi, Oliven, and host workshops, right? For the people running small tavern businesses, how to doing like balance your books, how to acquire sort of like, let's call it like your assets, what I can say. So how to do inventories, like how to manage your stock, emergency stock, all this sort of stuff is what he helped them with. And the key thing is that with that is that what we did in that project is that it's sustainable development, meaning that even though Abang left and I left the project, those projects still run today. Those people still have those skills, right? So that's what you need to be doing in your gap, is really just being active in it and just doing things that are going to add value to your CV. Ask yourself, is what I'm doing right now going to add value to my CV? If I'm chilling in the house, just smoking and chilling, can I put that on my CV? And the answer is no. So you're wasting it. See, anything to add there?
And I like what you mentioned there about, being productive in the free time that you have. If you look at like the construct of life, right? You never really have a time to think based on how life is designed. You are born, you've got 2 or 3 years of being at home. You're not yet capable of thinking. You go straight into creche, you go into primary school, you go to high school, and then most people get pushed right into university. So essentially, you've had no time to think. You've just been put on a wheel and you've been told to go this way. So I think the gap year is a very big blessing for people that can take it, because it is your first opportunity in life to think, where am I? How much breath do I need? And once you get that breath, go into specializing. And like, I've come across lots of people I've mentored and friends who went straight into specialization right after high school. And when they graduate or they have their PhDs or whatever, they feel like they know nothing because they only know one thing.
100%.
So I think that's the blessing of a gap year. It gives you breadth and context around the full compass of life, rather than this little needle that you feel is going to set you free in the future. And the world is changing as well, right? The days of specializing are slowly going away, because what you specialize in today,
irrelevant tomorrow.
Tomorrow is out the window. So I think it just gives you that mental agility, that life agility, that allows for you to really be resilient for any changes that may come through in life.
Well said. Very well said.
Agreed.
Cool. So I have another question for you, Karabo. Just around studying abroad. I mean, I studied abroad, so I'm a big advocate of it. But I mean, you've sent hundreds of students abroad, and you've seen that it's made. Can you maybe elaborate on the benefits of it? How valuable is it really for a student, and is it worth the money?
Okay. So what I say to my clients, and it happens in the initial stages of when I meet my clients, is that I say to them, Alex, this jump has to be educationally worth it. Which means that the school that you're going to is going to offer you a lot more than what WITS, UCT, studies, such can actually offer you as a university. But there's a caveat to that. Understand this, guys, is that I don't think people respect how good our schools actually are in this country, right? I mean, the best medical schools is like WITS, for argument's sake. You look at schools that are ranked in the top 300 in the world. Out of 3 million, put them easily in the top 1%. So what I tell my clients is that I don't want to work with students or families who just say, Karabo, I want to go overseas for the sake of it, because you're wasting money. Okay. To think about it as well, T, now we both understand like the cost of studying overseas is upwards of 400,000 Rand a year. All right.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money to be actually spending. But if you're spending 400,000 Rand a year to go to a school like Warwick or to go to St. Andrews or Edinburgh, it becomes 120% worth it, because your ROI on that in 3 years' time becomes massive. Okay. If you're spending money to go to a school like UPenn, UCLA, Davis, Arizona State, it becomes 100% worth it. All right. So the benefit I'd say is that if you're going abroad to go to a better school than what it would offer you in SA, 110%. I mean, we're talking about schools here. I know, for argument's sake, like coming out of the Wharton Business School, you go to a company like JP Morgan, you're not going to earn less than $80,000 a year. All right. You come from an Ivy League business school. They really, really want you. Right. You go to a Goldman Sachs, they're going to be paying you about $85,000 a year, right? For your first salary. That's ridiculous, right? You're earning upwards of 1.4, 1.5 million Rand, right?
Yeah.
And you're only like 23. So those are what I say the biggest benefits are from that point of view as well. But also to note that what's really cool about abroad studying is that they don't have an honors year, meaning that when you do your 3 years, you can automatically go do a master's program or postgraduate study, right? Obviously, there are some requirements that they say for an MBA, you got to have 5 years managerial experience, etc., etc. But a master's in law, you could do it off the bat as well, all right? So that is what I'd say I'd advocate for. And a lot of clients also like to try or ask me, like, can we do an undergrad here, postgrad abroad? 100%. You can do that. It's just not going to be as beneficial, meaning that you must first do an honors year in South Africa before you can go overseas. So it's an extra 4. So it's a whole 4 years, I would say, from that point of view. Also, a great thing to consider, and I look at very close with our clients, is what I call our feeder schools. So by definition, a feeder school is a school whereby your corporate companies would recruit from, right? So if I look at it in South Africa, the likes of EY, Discovery, KPMG, Deloitte, they're all, even Investec and your banks have got like these partnerships with our universities, where they'll ask for like the top 30 honor students, and they get like a work experience for a year, whereby the top 10 stay on for full employment. That stuff still exists overseas. So if you want to get into like a financial institutions, let's say in London, I would look at taking to like LSE, right? The London School of Economics. Postgrad, I would look at like Imperial College, right? I would look at University of Warwick for engineering. Warwick is close to Silverstone, which is where the Mercedes, Red Bull, Mercedes, Aston Martin F1 teams are around about base. So those are things that you'd be looking at in terms of trends about studying overseas. Is that a really, really key part of it as well? I think, to a great extent, I understand that we do have social economic issues in South Africa and why families would want to see that go. But I'm not an agent of immigration, right? I get no satisfaction by seeing my kids leave to go abroad. Generally, my hope and dream is what you and what I did too as well. And what I know is that you went overseas to gain the experience and knowledge, but now you're back home. You're back in Africa, you're back in Zimbabwe, you're building a better Africa for our children. That's my biggest draw. I think that's what drives me the most when I could go to work. It's not that I want brain drain. Alex, I see there's no satisfaction that I get by seeing, you leave my country and you make America better. But it's my hope and dream that when you go abroad, you gain those experiences, those knowledge, those networks, and you come back with it. Then you can say that I know Ryan from JP Morgan, he's got a massive fund he's looking to invest in. He wants to pump in, $100 million into South African economy. Then, that's how you make those sort of connections, right? So those are like the key things for me and what I do, right? It's just having that, knowing that my kids And with the kids stay there, it's fine. You know, I'm happy I was part of the journey, but really my hope and dreams that they do come back.
Wow.
Look, I
Wow.
promise you, man, we have a beautiful, our continent's gorgeous, our country, beautiful, the people, you know. I'm sure, guys, we've all been to Europe and the UK. I can, you know, for free that the weather's not the greatest. The
For
people can
sure.
be mean from time to time, you know. But you come to South Africa, man, you go to Cape Town, you go to Joburg, you know, friendly faces, hellos, goodbyes. Do you need directions? No one's ever going to tell you to go yourself. They'll say,
For
oh, listen,
sure.
let's try to work this out, you know. And
For
then they give
sure.
you very cool directions like a landmark. No, you'll see the Maraba start in the corner. When you see that, turn
Yeah.
left, you'll see a McDonald's.
Yeah.
There's a big rock, you
Yeah.
know, hookah right there. So those things you don't get abroad, right? Now I was in London as well. Like it feels like you're not wanted, you know. There's like a big sense of, you know, what are you doing? You'll go
Oh,
back to your home country.
you're not
You know what
one.
I mean, right?
They
Yeah,
don't want.
exactly. Yeah.
See?
Yeah. So yeah, that's what it is there. See,
Guys, can I just my battery's about to die and I just wanna plug my charger in. So
Sure.
you mind pausing just for a sec, Alex?
Yeah, no problem, dude. I'll pause the
Cool.
recording.
I didn't want to interrupt the flow.
perfect.
So Karabo, the one thing I wanted to ask you with regards to bringing people back, a more skilled and more educated workforce. You know, if you look at the best countries today, they learn from the best in the world. You know, you look at Qatar and
Mm,
they will poach the best flight controller from Switzerland for their airport. I feel like in Africa, sometimes we have a little bit of insecurity to recognize that there's things to improve on. So, you know, when you're mentoring people and you're putting people into University of London and all of these different places, is there a conversation there where you're saying to them, listen, like you don't have to leave South Africa. You can use this as a vehicle to come back and be better. Is that part of the coaching
yeah.
process?
So, Alex, it's so tricky, right, to actually mention that, you know, with because obviously their parents are there as well. What I like to make examples of is what opportunities they would have if they do come back, right? So, if you study a particular degree, like a lot of my kids, so for argument's sake, like being an actuary for to large extents, not really like a big thing abroad. I mean, to be an actuary in the United States takes so many years with so many board tests, etc. It's quicker it's like to become an actuary. But I say to my kids that they can have studies of course something called applied mathematics. So applied mathematics is basically like actuarial sciences on steroids. Okay. It incorporates things like coding as well. So it's very, very there. But then with that applied mathematics degree, there's no financial institution that you cannot work in. So we're
Yeah.
talking
Mm,
about you can come back and work at risk, at discovery, work at outsurance. You can work at Investec,
Management
HSBC, big
consulting.
financial. Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And the thing about it is that because not many people actually have an applied mathematics degree because it's so hard to actually obtain, it's I think at Harvard it's actually one of the hardest degrees to actually get. You automatically become employable. Now, you want
mm,
to be employable in South Africa by a long shot, right? Because number one, the cost of living is obviously a lot cheaper. You can get a lot more value for the rand that you would out of like $1. So you automatically get put into that like that 1% bracket as well in there,
Yep.
you know. So
Yep.
there is a
mm.
conversation that I had to say, listen, there are a lot of opportunities in South Africa. And I would like us to get to a point as well, like even in recruitment in South Africa, we recruit based on how competent you are, not
Yeah.
necessarily on anything else, right? Based on, you know, because I can assure you that there's a person of color who's competent of doing the job that you are looking to hire
Yeah.
someone for, instead of going out there and looking for a friend or a chummy or making a back end deal to say, if I give you this position, I want X% cut, you know? So those are the key things about, yes, Alex.
I just want to add something as well. You know, I've noticed from a lot of friends that have gone overseas, you know, in South Africa, we have a skills shortage. So you get paid a premium
Mm,
for being skilled. If you go to a developed market like England or Australia, there's no shortage of skilled workers. So the pay
right.
is adjusted like that. I mean, come from South Africa where you are a high net worth individual, so to speak, going to this market, it's a bit of a shock, you know?
Mm, mm, mm,
Mm,
mm. I
mm.
think to your point, Alex, as well, I think it's what you say is pretty good because I mean, if you think about it as well, like how many times do we actually, and I've seen as well with Eskom that we recruit engineers from abroad to come in, right? Because there is a shortage of specialized skills there because everyone just leaves, you know. So I think you're having great infrastructure, great leadership as well will definitely retain a lot of people. And what I've also seen as well in the market, a lot of people who work remotely, you get a remote visa. where they live in Cape Town or they live in KZN, but they work for an international company. It helps us, don't get me wrong, because they spend money here, so they buy houses and they buy assets.
Sure.
But it's really painful to see our people leave. And I really hope that, and I pray that people do come back so we can really just build this country again, guys, because it's beautiful. We have everything. We have the climate. We have the big five. We got Cape Town. We got KZN. What more do you need? We don't have crazy weather. So yeah, for sure there.
Hey.
And I like what you touched on there, Karabo, around, having a good understanding of why you are leaving, particularly for studies, right? And I mean, I can use myself as a good example. My purpose and main drive for leaving was to differentiate myself and to future-proof myself. At the time, there was no course or degree that could help me specialize in what I'm doing today. But just by being exposed to a first world country and the industry that exists there that we're not yet in Africa, I was able to develop an understanding and therefore do my studies in such a way that I have an inclined understanding of it in comparison to people locally. And that's what gave me the confidence to come back. Yes, made me very employable, but it also has made me very entrepreneurial.
Yep.
Because every role that I get is almost one of an entrepreneur in an organization. So I like how you broke it down around going overseas to gain knowledge and then coming back, because I think that's where one can really be exponentially successful. Yes, you can go overseas and be incredibly successful, but you're competing against 1,000 fish who have grown up in that environment their whole lives, and you have no competitive edge over them because that's not your home ground.
Yep. T, if I can also jump in with a question here. Karabo, I'm quite curious what your thoughts are on online learning and self-motivated learning, because we're seeing a lot of institutions like MIT, Harvard, et cetera, making their courses available online. Get Smarter is a company that's also emerged in the last couple of years and become very popular. Especially if you go on LinkedIn, you see everybody said, I wanted to challenge myself and I did a short course at blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this? Because obviously I know it's a different experience, but for people who don't really have the resources to go overseas, is there utility?
Yeah. Look, 100%. It's a bit alternative, right? Than going abroad. And look, I've seen and I work with kids as well who study online, right? So they're doing the IB curriculum online or they're doing A levels online, and they still are competitive. In fact, at where I work now at Crimson, we have an online high school. It's called Crimson Global Academy. It's the largest online high school in the world, right? I think we're online, maybe like the third or the second, something like that. What it offers is and obviously what it does offer as well from an international point of view, it offers international learning whereby kids are not just in class with South Africans, but they're in class with kids from the UAE, from the UK, and from the Brits of Europe as well. So it becomes multicultural, all right? Another thing that was cool about it was that the teachers themselves would do live examples whereby I actually had a teacher once who was doing, I think he was teaching, I think it was trig, if I'm mistaken, technology, and he would actually be outside and he would measure the mountain in the background, with the kids and show them, look, if I'm standing here at this degree, at this angle, I know that, the landscape is whatever degrees it is here, or the length is here, and you use Pythagoras to figure out, hypotenuse, all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? So that I think it was beneficial for the kids as well. However, what I will say about Alex is like a lot of the times as well, I think what I would always advocate for and what I like is a brick and mortar school. Schools teach culture, schools teach discipline, obviously depending which schools you go to. So you're going to go to an all boys school, like you guys went to Benny's, I think Benny's Co, though, if I'm mistaken.
No.
No, it's boys.
It's all boys. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I think, yeah. So all boys schools, you learned what you learn now, right? And also the connection that you've made with T and your brothers, it's something like that you can't really replicate on an online platform, right? So those sort of things, the traditions behind it as well, right? It's such an old school as well. I mean, the boys till this day, I know the boys still get hyped up, against the Hilton versus Michael House fixture, all the old boys come back and the boys are getting rowdy, when you guys play school like St. David's, St. John's, it's a big deal,
For sure.
I've seen when I go to these derbies, memories, man, you know what I mean? You see You know, when you're playing ruggers, you're in matric, it's your last derby, you know, and you get a
100%.
W. It's a bit emotional, you know.
Yeah.
The boys can get emotional, you know. So those sort of things are like, you know, you can't replicate on an online basis. I think it's also, you know, another part of it. But what are the advantages? I'd say, well, it allows kids, number one, to wholly focus on like academics. So if you're not a sporty kid and what you like is doing your academics, I'd say that, you know, online is dead. But also for athletes, right? So kids who are playing tennis or golf or any sort of sport at a very high level for their age, online is probably the best way to go for them because it allows them to actually train and then
Yeah.
study,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So train in the morning, come back for the afternoon classes and train like at night, you know. So that's what also CGO, what the online platform does offer from this sort of point of view. And what you touched on, Alex, about things like, you know, universities offering online courses 100%, you know, those are still very good. In fact, some of the best MBA programs are done online, right?
yeah,
Imperial offers an online MBA. So does MIT. A lot of your big universities will offer an online MBA because obviously they understand, number one, the costs
Yeah.
of doing a degree at those schools could be upwards of R1 million, but also the logistical nightmare, right? You know, I can't imagine you leaving the family for a whole year. You know,
no, never, for sure.
exactly. You know what I mean, right? It's a logistical nightmare because obviously when you are at that level, you probably have a family that you're looking after. You've got a really good job. You want to expand. So I think there's no disadvantage to doing it online. It does offer the same qualification with the same strengths. Then you're just I've seen people as well. All they do is that they will just fly out for their graduation. But I'm sure, you know, you can take the family with you too for a bit of like a
For sure.
holiday, you know,
Yeah,
in California.
100%,
You know, exactly. Fly them
100%,
out, you
100%.
graduate, take photos, you stay there for a bit of a time, you know, while you graduate. So there is a big shift to the online space as well, and it does make sense. I'm just in the opinion that, you know, I see families won't move as much from to a traditional from away from a traditional high school, you know. No, I see, and a lot of times as well, like it happens with like tradition, whereby since your brother went to Benny's, you went to Benny's. If you have a son, he'll go there, and so forth, so forth. It's that sort of chain, you know, that you know people love as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
but
Yeah.
definitely to your point, Alex, there still is a benefit. But in terms of the movement now, I'm still seeing brick and mortar schools still leading the way for some time, you know,
for
especially.
sure, for sure, for
That's
sure.
a
Yeah.
great,
And I like how you mentioned.
yeah,
Go
great point.
ahead, Alex.
What I wanted to emphasize there was it's all about availability. Like, what can you do? So, like you said, brick and mortar is first prize because of memory making, life experience, relationship building. You
You're
can't,
critical.
you can't replace that. But if you're somebody who doesn't have the resources, it is still worth it to study online,
Mm.
especially for a country like South Africa, where, you know, people, you just don't have the opportunity to go to the UK or America or Australia or whatever, and you're trying to get out of your circumstances. You have high quality educational opportunities online. All you need is an internet connection. So there is utility to it. T, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to add on to what Karabo was saying about the brick and mortar model, right? I think the reason why private schooling has become such a big business is because you almost hand over your responsibility as a parent for 8 hours in a day in terms of grooming, in terms of disciplines, in terms of forming friendships, and in terms of just making sure your kid does the actual work. You know, I think that's where the premium cost comes in when you send your kids to a private school or a top university.
Yeah.
And because time is such a constraint in day-to-day life in the system of capitalism, like Harvard said, for many years to come, it will be the preferred way to study. But on the contrary, Alex, you also obviously mentioned that there's people who need to get out of a certain circumstance because of affordability and life. But
Yeah.
I think the reality is that as those people get out of those circumstances and better their lives, they will just send their kids back to the same brick and mortar model because it's a lot easier. You can imagine as a youngster attending classes online, firstly, to focus is a challenge.
Yeah.
To be disciplined enough to do the homework is a challenge.
Yeah.
You know, to attend the class on time is a challenge, particularly if your parents are at work. So I think there's a lot of challenges that come with learning online when you're particularly in your youth, when you don't have the zest to actually want to grow your mind in
Yeah.
comparison to when you're an adult, when you know that this is needed for me to develop and allow myself to grow in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spot on.
I think Alex, what you said as well is pretty cool because actually what I've seen as well with some online institutions, I'm trying to think of what the like UCT online for argument's sake, what that has done to a lot of students is change lives because it's actually made IEB education a lot more affordable. All
Mm.
right. Kids
Mm.
don't have to go to your Hiltons, your Crawfords, your Michael Houses, your St. Albans, whatever, your big private schools to get an IEB education. It's made it that families can pay 2,000 Rand a month for the kids to get
Sure.
an IEB
Amazing.
education, which has changed it,
Sure.
right? And it really goes a long way. And the problem, not the problem, but obviously like what your guest was talking about previously, you said that you have a guest who's going to do high-speed internet for townships. We
Yep.
need that
Yep.
because that's the starting block. If you can
Yeah.
get Soweto, Mamlodi residents, or even residents, high-speed internet, then the families, who can afford to pay 2,000 Rand, a month, which is, comfortable if you look at someone being paid minimum wage. Yes, it's still expensive, don't get me wrong, but it's 1,500 Rand a month for the child to be at home and to get that IUB education. You know
Yep.
what I mean, right? Write the
Mm.
exams, and then it really just propels it. So really, I think, I 100% support your previous guest as well. And I really hope that, they can do their mission with Godspeed because we need it.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
I
that
have
sort of thing would be great.
I have a question that just popped into my mind now. Something that we take for granted is the the generational, I don't want to say legacy or tradition of tertiary education. So what I mean by this is like often when your parents went to university, you just know that you're going to go. It's normal.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, especially in our country, don't have that. How often do you encounter that in your work where you are speaking to somebody whose parents didn't go to university and aren't, they're not aware of the nuances and the challenges and the difficulties of this whole experience?
Yeah. Alex, it's so rare because the fact that it costs so much, right? A lot of the clients that we meet or parents are specialists in their field, right? They are massive CAs, they are directors, they are this and they are that.
Yeah.
I have met families as well whereby it's a family-run business, whereby the dad said out of high school, I
Yeah.
went straight into the family business and I just grew it like that. And that's just an entrepreneurial mindset. But it's one in a dozen. Like it's so few, right? What we have seen
Mm.
though is that the thing about if my dad went to Harvard, can I get into Harvard? They've
Yeah.
moved away from that. Generational sort of legacy doesn't necessarily count anymore. It used to have somewhat of like a bearing, but slowly but surely that is kind of falling away because that might not be the best student to get into that university,
Sure.
right? Whereby you can say my grandfather, my dad, and then you want to pay to play. Big schools generally don't really need that, but yes, some of them would be accepted if you dad's got millions of dollars to hold a library,
Sure.
Yeah.
extraordinary case like that, if you're like a Trump, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
but, to your point, man, it's so rare because a lot of the times when we meet families, parents are professionals who've gotten degrees. So that's the thing about going abroad. Locally, what you actually find now is people graduating now have broken the generational curse. They're
Mm,
now the first people in their family to get a degree, to get an honors, to get a master's,
amazing.
etc., which is great to see. And hopefully it keeps the ball rolling, but like you said as well, if dad went to university and got a degree as well, it sets the tone, for
Mm.
the family, So
Mm.
100% agree with that. But from a university abroad overseas, it's quite rare that you find a family whose dad says, look, I didn't go overseas. Because, I mean, to think about it, that father or mother is possibly running an organization that they've built or they inherited or whatever it is, that's what, making more than what they need to afford for the kids to go study overseas.
For sure.
So, yeah, that's the thing about it as well. So, yeah, that's the way you are.
Okay.
So I want to turn this topic on its head in the sense that I think education definitely clearly seems to be the key to build a great life, but at the same time, based on my experience, education can also block your mindset
Mm,
and discourage you from seeing life for what it is and also uh, diminish your ability to see opportunities. So with that being said, I wanted to ask you, in terms of the future of education versus self-help, how 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 fine should that balance be, considering the fact that we're now living in a time where things constantly change, and what you study today may not be there in 10 years' time.
Man, you're throwing me in the deep end. It's such a tough question. So look, where do we start with this? So self-help versus education. I think that there's also some careers pathways that you actually need to have a proper professional education for. And I think it comes down to what Vusi was saying one time in one of his I don't know the podcast or his book that he wrote, but when I read about it. But essentially what it comes down to is actually what is the end outcome that you want to achieve? I think a lot of times people confuse the whole idea of being an entrepreneur. All right. I think an entrepreneur, basically, my definition is that if you were to leave your organization for 90 days, could still hit its KPIs, could still match its merits and also then thrive, then you're an entrepreneur. A lot of the times I feel that people want to be self-employed, whereby you determine what time you clock in, clock out, and how much you make. All right. So that's where I think people actually want to be, but they confuse the two. They confuse the two in that sort of sense. All right. But a professional, like you're saying, in terms of your self-help, is that the people who are deemed are professionals are like doctors, right? Whereby you do the work, you heal the patient. If you don't dare, if you're not there to heal the patient dies or doesn't get healed. Worst case scenario. Okay, so that's what I think a lot of people confuse it with. Now, in terms of self-help, is that it's tricky because I think it depends on what industry you're in. You can't do self-help in medicine. You've got to have a degree to be a doctor. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to let you cut me up if you say to me that no, I watched like a podcast about it.
For sure.
But to be a business owner, to run whatever you want to do, some part of service, I don't think it's that critical. I don't think you'd actually need. Yes, I think the benefit of going to school and having that you've got a foundation. You know how to you know how to work the financial statements of a business. You know how to balance the books. That becomes important, especially when you are looking to try and get funding, right? You can present as a full trial balance sheet of the organization. You can show the incomes, expenditures, you know, what your projections are going to be from a financial business. Those things you're going to need from actually knowing the content of how to do it. But to actually run a business that you're going to have, I don't think it's that important as well, you know, sort of the aspect of it. So self-help, I'd say to in my opinion as well, but I'm keen to hear what you guys have to say. It's such a hard question. I think self-help for business or a product or service, 100% not really critical, but from a professional point of view, to become a professional in an industry, to be part of a board or to be recognized by an organization, you got to have that sort of degree and qualification. But Alex, I don't know what your take is there. It's such a big question.
Yeah, T, you hit you with a real brain. It's a hard one. But you know what? I would say this from my experience, right? Formal education in a professional environment is context. It gives you context. So obviously when you start working any job, you are pretty much useless because you don't have any practical experience. You understand what people are saying. So, you know, if you're a first year audit clerk, someone says to you, you need to go speak to the client and get the support for this trial balance or whatever. You know what they're saying. You don't know what it looks like because you haven't done it before, but you know what they're saying. So you have context, and you can't underestimate how valuable that context is because your rate of learning is so accelerated when you have it. So that's the value of the education. The self-help for me is your character. It's your being. It's how you're going to perform in the environments. So both go hand in hand. If you're choosing a specific professional environment, education is non-negotiable. You have to have it. But the beauty of self-help is that it applies in every environment because it'll shape your whole life, everything, your relationships, professional, your personal, etc., etc. So, like, that's my take on a very difficult question, is you need both.
For sure.
No, your take is brilliant, Alex. Fuck, that was that's
I had the luxury of time to think. You had to speak the right way.
Because it does give you context. Like, I think you're 100% right, man. I think there's things that, like, if I didn't know for textbook, I'd be lost. And then you look absolutely, you
like
look incompetent, you look a bit unprofessional. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, you're like, now I'm explaining this concept to you before I can help you execute it. Now, like, you know, that's true. That's very, very true. I like that, Alex. That's sensational.
I must say, I agree with the both of you on that, right? And I mean, the reason why I was asking the question is because from my experience, what I've seen is that, I mean, the system is designed in such a way that the world is so big now, right? It's not 2 billion people anymore. It's going close on 8 or 9 billion people,
Yeah.
right? And the only way to build credibility, like Karabo mentioned, reputation, is to have a stamp that proves that you've done certain things and you've managed to instill the disciplines that have allowed for you to now hold the certificate and say, I'm a doctor or I'm an honor student.
Mm.
And I think that's what gets you into the system.
Yep.
However, I do think if you only rely on the piece of paper, then you may not thrive in the system.
Yes.
Because in order to thrive in the system, you need to be a social being. I think at the end of the day, life is a behavioral science. It's a social science. And a lot of the time, like they say, business leaders and CEOs and stuff like that are generally C students,
Yeah.
not the A students,
Yeah.
generally C students, because over time they've gained the social skills of life that allow for them to navigate the corporate environment in addition to what they have with their skills. So like Alex said, and like I said, I think it goes hand in hand. But I think when one ends, the other one must start in
100%.
order for you to really, really develop. And I think a lot of people focus on the skills. And you get all these A cum laude students who don't manage to get anywhere in their life because they forgot the social science part of life in their journey to corporate.
Dude, I can really speak to this. I have two very important things that I want to highlight here. So one, throughout my articles, the best people I worked with were people who were not the best students. They failed some modules. They experienced some failure early on in their academic career because it really forced them to grow. You know, like we say, you don't learn from success. You learn from failure. Because when there's success, you celebrate. When there's failure, you introspect and you ponder and you analyze and you say, shit, okay, I don't want to experience this pain anymore. So what am I going to do better next time? Right? That's the first thing. The second thing, I had the privilege of my father being a chartered accountant. So he was a bit of a mentor to me in my career. And one of the things he said to me when I qualified was, congrats, but now your career is actually only starting. You haven't reached the top of the mountain. You've just started walking it. And I think with education, it's important to emphasize this to people as well. When you get your degree, you haven't made it. You're just starting. And often people sometimes get too excited with these things. They forget you have to be a lifelong learner. The only way to stay relevant is to keep learning and keep growing. Like T keeps emphasizing, we're living in a time now where things are developing so rapidly. Every day there's a new breakthrough. And you've got to have this mentality of, I will keep learning, I will keep reinventing, I will keep growing. So those are the two things that I really wanted to emphasize there. Karabo.
Yeah, I think what, and you know what, things that I've seen a lot of it now on social media. Now that everyone's kind of like graduating in a good time, and there's cause for celebration, but sometimes I feel like it's a bit over the top. Reason why I say that is because you might have got your honors, and I promise you, so do thousands of other people. But how are you different, right? I mean, when we do, sort of like recruitment, and I look at, who's going to be joining my team, right? I have an intake particular year. I want to go on some interns. What I always say is that like everyone is actually the same. You all qualify from a paper point of view. You've all got the same degree. Yes, some of you got better marks than others, but like it's actually that personal trait, like you're talking about, right? And it's like some pretty cool. So when I have interviews with them, generally it's a person who knows how to socially interact and speak well actually gets the job.
Yeah.
Sometimes it happens as well that this person has spoken so well and he knows how to engage with other people that he's not the best person in terms of from a qualification point of view, but I know in practice he knows that will have the skills. I was not an A student, right? I promise that, like I was not like shooting the lights out,
I don't think
I got
any
like
of
one
us
or two
were.
distinctions here. Yeah, I never shot the lights out at all, bro. But what I was good at is I can speak, right? I can communicate with people, they get to the gab, and it's a gift and a curse. It'll get me into trouble sometimes, but more often than not, it'll get me out of trouble. But like I say as well, even things like small talk, like people don't, especially in corporate, I think people underestimate the ability to have small talk with someone.
100%.
Have small talk with your boss, with the CEO, with the CFO. People think that I'm just there to sit down, work a 9 to 5, get my paycheck and bounce. those people I don't find get promoted easily. I find the ones who can, yes, they get their job done, they hit their KPIs, but they can chat.
Yeah.
They can talk to people, they can engage with people. And it's also important to note that as well, is that on a matrix as well, what I look for, and I know what my other exec teams look for as well, is that when we're looking at like things like promotions, etc., like that, yes, there's a KPI index, but there's also personality. It's mean that how have you impacted the team with the way that you are, your energy around it? Have you improved other people in the organization, right? It wasn't even your KPI to improve this person, right? It wasn't part of what you need to do, but you did it anyway because you have a sense of Ubuntu being like a person, right? So that's what I really do like with that soft skill. And I tell you, what you're saying is right, man. Like you can be a professional to a certain point, but if you can't chat the chat, it becomes very, very hard to climb the corporate ladder. And like a CE student, on paper should not be a CEO, but that person knows how to communicate with people.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing about it at the end of the day is actually people communication. Because that's who actually drive value chain and value add in any organization are the people in it.
Yeah.
So that's really good, actually.
It's an intangible. It's not easy to quantify it, but everyone knows it's there.
Yeah, for sure. I
and
like that.
Even if you guys think about it, like, what makes a great leader?
Yeah.
It's the ability to get people to move in one direction.
Yeah.
And when people move in one direction, they do the job.
100%.
Yeah.
It's not the ability to force people to do their job. It's just the ability to get people to align and to move in one direction joyfully and in a unified and united manner.
Yeah.
And I think that's aided by being able to have the small talk, by being able to impact people, by being able to bring your passionate energy and transfer it into other people so that everyone gets onto the same boat as you.
Awesome. I think what's pretty good as well is that, like you're saying, for me, like a really great leader as well, and I work on this myself as well a lot of the times. And I've been very fortunate that I work in an organization where the culture is kind of like a startup kind of a feel, although it's quite big. I mean, we passed our unicorn status evaluation of about $1 billion. But what it really feels like is that it's like, we don't tell you how to do your job. We just tell you that, listen, you need to bring in how you get there to you, right? Is that we manage the people that have to achieve those KPIs. Simply means that whatever resource that you feel that you need, I'm able to provide so that you can do your job. I'm not here to be on your neck about it. I'm not going to check in on you every day to say, yo, I see that you had 2 meetings yesterday. How did it go? I want to report on how's your pipeline. You can update those on a spreadsheet and everyone can have a look at it as and when you want. I just think that for me, having that leader whereby they say to you, look, this is your little baby. This is your KPI. Whenever you need help, please shout. Don't wait until like a day before we do a recon to then say, oh, I need this, this, and that. But the minute you need it, raise your hand, and as management, we'll try and get that for you and get that sorted out so that you can do your job and give you the resources that you need. That's for me like a great manager, right? Like you see the end goal, how you get there is completely up to you, and it also kind of like ties in with, having that idea of faith, is that what you want to achieve, but I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I have enough faith in Christ, my Savior, that He will lead me there the right way. I think there's a line that says, I, the Lord, at the right time will make it happen, so just be still. It's kind of like the same concept that I have with my team as well. Like I like to focus on saying to them, look, you know how to get there. This is what I want us to achieve together. And here are the goals. How we get there, we'll figure it out. But I don't want to be on your neck about it. You see the goal, and it really, if you can get, the team to also idolize and see what you're trying to achieve, you've done your job. Everyone moves in that one direction. We all get there.
I'll see.
Just to bring some banter into this, it reminds me of like there's one quote I read the other day by a rapper called Lil Wayne. And it goes, real G's move in silence like lasagna.
Yeah, easy. That's easy for you.
And the connotation of that is that in lasagna you don't pronounce the word G.
Yeah.
And the whole metaphor is that someone who really knows what they're doing doesn't run their mouth and breathe people down the neck in order for them to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
They observe from afar and they're G's because of that. And I think that is what it truly is. You give people space to perform to their best of their ability in accordance with their personality and their traits. And you just focus on making sure that the vision is clear so that they can produce the outcomes. As long as it's done in an ethical and highly moral way,
Yep.
you let them do what they need to do. And that's why real G's move in silence, like lasagna.
What a great point.
That's Wheezy. That's Wheezy for you. That's Wheezy.
Gold.
Yeah. So Alex, I'm gonna hand over to you to ask your questions. I've gone deep in mine. So Karabo, Alex has 3 questions for you. So Alex, take the mic.
You know, I was thinking to myself, when you left your family business, right? You were obviously taking a step that had a lot of uncertainty ahead of you. You know, obviously you know your family, you know that they're there, they have the best interest for you, they're on your team, like they want you to be the best version of yourself. But it is challenging to walk away from what's familiar and what you know. You know, I would love for you to dig into that decision a little bit more. How did you feel when you were doing it? You know, was it scary for you? Because you're obviously a very confident guy, and you have faith is strong for you. But a lot of people are scared of uncertainty, especially in the job market. How did you navigate that?
No. Alex, I think what you should be scared of in life is being in the same position that you were last year. That's what your real fear should actually be.
Great.
It's not necessarily that, I'm scared. I'm scared of being at home or at the business and have not improved myself as a person. That's my biggest fear, right? Now, yes, obviously you leave and you like think to yourself, okay, there's not going to be no more support from them, what I was getting, I might not get it anymore. It was awkward at the Christmas lunch, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I was, but I was more afraid of not improving myself as a person. I mean, they always say like, don't compare yourself to someone yesterday, but compare yourself to who you were yesterday. And I thought that I would never be a better person than I was if I just stayed there.
Awesome.
When that creeped in as well, again, and I keep tying back to it, it has to be my faith, is knowing that I'm not on this journey alone. There's a reason why I'm going out here, Even if you think of things like, the book of Moses, right? When he led the Hebrews out of Egypt, like there was massive uncertainty. The
Yeah.
trip that was meant to take like 10 days took them 40 years,
Yeah.
to find the land. And then
For sure.
to add insult to injury, after all of that, Moses didn't even get to the promised land. He died, right?
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like, so that's the thing about the journey itself. And then it's only because I had that faith and that knowledge that I was comfortable to say to myself, okay, you're going to take this leap of faith and you're going to go out there and you're going to find yourself. It was massive uncertainty. It really was, will I be able, I mean, how will they view me from a family point of view? Again, will I get a job off the bat? Am I employable?
Yeah.
Fortunately, I was. So those are the biggest fears that I did have. But one thing as well is that I'm not afraid to fail. That kind of makes sense. Like, I don't view failure as what people view it for. I think people look at failure as like a step back and like it ends your life.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I pushed, man, and if I fail forward. Right? I've learned something. Okay, that didn't work. Don't hold a rattlesnake. It's like gonna bite you. I learned that. Okay, cool. Let's keep it moving now. All right. So as long as you learn from your failures, and I know also like trust God's timing. It's very, very important, Sometimes, you rush the process and you skip a step, and God says, no, you gotta come back.
Yeah.
And at the end goal of it all, is that it's not that God doesn't want you to be successful. Is that what you're wishing for, what you're praying for? The blessing is already being done. It's delivered, it's sealed. He's not preparing you for the blessing. It's not the other way around.
Sure.
Right. Imagine if God told you this and on the 30th of April, you're going to be a multi-billionaire. You might start acting different. You might even delete my number, man. Now you like don't even know me anymore. You're moving wild, So he's building a character. He's building you to be, modest, to be humble. So when you do get there, you are prepared for the blessing that he's going to be giving you. So that is, I think, what my journey is. And that's how I view it, by the way, Alex. It's not, I didn't view it as a sense of, okay, I'm aborting or I'm abandoning my family. But I've been in the sense of, okay, I'm on my own journey. I know what I prayed for. This is part of the journey on how I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
You know, is that I have to leave. I have to grow my own wings. It's kind of like, you know, when a bird pushes the baby out the nest, you know, to fly and soar like on its own. It's what it really feels like. And just to be my own man as well outside of that.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm.
And I think one thing I also want to say, as a man of faith myself, you know, God gives you what you need, not always what you want. And those two things are not
Mm,
always the same things. So, you know,
mm,
like you
mm.
say, trusting in God's plan for you is a big thing. Um, T, I just want to jump onto another thing, but if you have something to say, the floor is yours. You can.
Yeah. I mean, mine is short and sweet, but I think, like the way, I mean, you spoke about Moses never reaching the promised land, right? I mean, this emphasizes the point that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey
Mm,
at the end of the
Mm,
day. And I think the journey that you take at the end of the day, being a young individual, should be one that when you come back, you can point the direction where everyone else needs to go, you know? So when
yeah.
you depart or when you leave a certain journey, it doesn't mean that I'm gone forever, right? I
yeah.
mean, when people conquered the world, they always went back home, but they pointed a new direction where there's opportunity, there's gold, there's water, there's minerals. And I think that's the
Mm,
responsibility of each generation to improve versus the prior. So I think it's just a form of natural progression and evolution to take those decisions because it just allows for you to see the world better, to come back to those who've been doing things the same way and play your part and say, in order for us to be a greater generation, this is the direction I think we need to go because of what I've seen. And when you can
mm,
emphasize what you've seen, then they will follow. And I think that's how generational wealth is created. And that's how families become greater. That's how nations become greater.
Well said.
mm. Love it.
Well said. Last question from my side. You know, on this podcast, we talk a lot about authenticity. Um, I think it's one of the major keys to living a successful life. You work in sales, you're somebody who's very focused on relationship building. How big of a part does truth, authenticity, and honesty play for you in building relationships and just living your life the way you want to and being the confident guy that you want to be?
Yeah. I think there's a philosopher. I don't know what he well he's a clinical psychologist. His name is Jordan Peterson. I'm sure you guys have heard about him as well.
Bro.
In one of his books, yeah, in one of his books as well, in 12 Rules of Life, is very, very important book. And I encourage people, you know, if you listen to the podcast, even just like even if you don't read it, go into YouTube and hear those 12 rules of life. And he says one of the things that I live by is very important is to tell the truth or at least don't lie. All
Mm,
right. Now, when you understand what that means, is that if you want pain, if you want to stop feeling like pain and hurt, stop lying.
yeah.
Because when you stop lying, you actually reveal what you want to see and what you need to see. All right.
Mm,
You cannot, and I think about it as well. People understand is that, like, you know, it's quite obvious, and you can see when someone's uncomfortable with what they're saying and what they're telling you that they are lying to you. So
Yeah.
in the sales process, you've got to be honest, right? And build that quorum of trust to say, listen, guys, um, when I have my meetings, as well, like if I when I meet a client for the first time, so I tell them upfront, listen, the whole purpose of me having this sort of consultation with you right now is I want to understand, am I the right fit for you? And
Mm,
are you the right fit for my company? Let's first start there and build that relationship on that bedrock. Once we can say to each other, okay, we have a common goal that we're trying to achieve. We're trying to get T into Harvard. Okay, now we know what we're trying to achieve together. Are we the right fit for one another? And the only way to find that out is to be honest with someone. Look them in the eye and tell them the truth, right? It also happens a lot with kids who have ambition of going to top universities, but don't have top marks, or
mm,
there's a gap in their application that they need to fulfill as well. And that is what actually builds true relationships over time. You know, nothing kills relationship than lying, right? Professionally, personally, in your love life, in your marriage, nothing will kill a relationship quicker than telling a lie.
mm,
Because lies
mm,
are by itself, by nature, it's like compounded interest, right? They build up on each other. You now need to remember your lie, to lie
mm,
again, to cover
mm,
up the lie that you've just told. It gets to
mm.
a point whereby you don't even remember what you lied about in the first place,
yeah.
Yeah.
right? Now I must remember my lie all the time, and it has to make sense all the time. You know,
Yeah, for
that
sure.
sounds exhausting, guys. I don't know about you. That sounds really exhausting, you know.
Yeah.
We're really working crazy corporate jobs, you know. Now I must remember my lie to my partner, I remember my lie to my mom. It just sounds like it's too much. And then worst of all is lying to a client will always come back at the end.
Yeah.
And it could come back for legal like ramifications. All right. If you
Mm,
get to a point where you lie, you can lose your job. If you
mm,
look at things like the Steinhoff, he
Yep.
lied and then he lost his life. You know,
mm,
that's how deep lying can actually get for you. And there's a thing people believe that they feel like, you know, I think if you think of like hell itself as a concept, it's a bottomless pit. You can
Yep.
always
mm,
do something to make a situation worse.
Yeah.
People think
mm,
that like, oh no, I'm living in hell already. It can't get worse. Brother, I promise you that it can get worse.
for
Yeah.
All
sure.
right.
For
And
sure.
then you're gonna just keep lying. It goes to now you're dealing with alcohol, depression. You're depression, you're on pills, you're on alcohol, you're on drugs, you lose your family. It just keeps getting deeper and deeper. The pit of hell
Mm,
is bottomless, is what I keep telling people.
mm,
And the only way that you're gonna get out of there is by love and stop lying, you know.
for
Be
sure. For
authentic
sure.
and be your true self, you know.
For sure.
I never try to even when I meet a client, it's not I don't try to convince them about anything. I'm just trying to tell them is what the relationship is, what we offer, and can we help you? Are we the right organization for you? And are you the right, are you the right family for me? Because I don't want to work with a family who's going to be, you know, also lying themselves about, you know, they don't like, then like they don't pay you, you know, I got to pay my staff. I've got to do this. I got to do like, you know, they say, no, oh, we're having a tough life, whatever it is, we'll pay you end of the month. And end of the month comes, they don't pay. I
100%.
don't want to deal with that. You know,
Yeah,
I'd rather not have you as a client then.
Yeah.
Let's rather not
for
go
sure.
down this relationship because all we're going to be doing is become spiteful and hate each other. They're going to badmouth you, then you're going to lose referrals. So you're losing
Yeah,
future business, you know? And that's the worst thing as well about it. So really in the line of sales as well, guys, you know, I know we're always trying to get that sale. We're always trying to get that thing across the line, but don't lie about it. Be honest and put, you know, be frank and forth so that people can make an honest decision. Is
Spot
what
for
on.
you
sure.
need
For sure.
in
For
that
sure.
life as well. So, you know, being true to yourself is very important.
See.
And I like what you mentioned there about lying, right? I think this transcends. I always obviously relate sales to life. I'm
Mm,
going to speak about the life side now. You know, honesty is the first chapter in the book of wisdom. You guys would know, right? And like,
mm,
I think where lying starts is where you put on a mask.
yeah.
That's where you start lying, right? Because you firstly give a false projection of yourself, you give a false projection of who you are, and then from there you start lying to yourself on a daily basis. And I think once you start lying to yourself, then lying to your partner, your mom, your dad, your brother, I mean, that's the easiest thing to do, right? Then your clients,
Yep.
right? And it just cascades and becomes worse. So I think it starts off firstly with remove the mask, be authentic, and then be true to yourself. And once you can be true to yourself, then you know the gateway of authenticity is limitless. And I think authenticity exposes you to so much more about the world in the sense that you're even able to sense a liar before they even tell a lie.
Yeah.
You can feel them off
Yeah.
because they're performing, you know, and that obviously transcends further into things like energy and stuff like that. But like when you're truly authentic with yourself, your gut kicks in, the universe kicks in, and the cosmos just function in such a way that none of that will come in your way. And if it does come, it won't disrupt any future earnings that you are meant to gain from based on your journey of life.
Mm.
Beautiful. Well said, T. Love it.
Over to you, Alex.
Look, honestly, that's the last question that I had. I would just say one last thing. Um, Authenticity and vulnerability go hand in hand, right? And the beauty of being authentic and vulnerable is that you give others permission to be authentic and vulnerable around you. So it's such a big part of relationships. And I think as men, like vulnerability is not something that comes natural. You know, we kind of get groomed from a young age to think that strength is just being emotionless and cold, but I would argue it's the other way around. It takes a lot of
Mm,
strength to be vulnerable and authentic especially when it doesn't suit you. You know, it's easy to be authentic when you're winning and when you're killing things.
Yeah,
The question is, can you do it when you're going through a rough patch? So,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the last thing
Yeah.
I'll trouble.
Actually, yeah, I'm gonna tease actually a question for you as a parent. I can ask like I'm not doing marketing on the side now I have you here. What would motivate you as a parent to send your children to study abroad? Like what would be the driving factors that you would want for that?
Intercultural experience. So for me, one of that really opened my mind and changed the way that I look at the world was being able to interact with people from all walks of life. And I
Mm,
think when you are in Africa in particular, we don't have access to a big international community. I think South Africa in itself is predominantly South Africans, but when you go to London, 55% of London is foreigners. When you go to Shanghai and you get to places where, 30% of certain communities are Americans and Europeans, you really start to expand your horizon of thinking and your perspectives on life, what life means, what goals you set, and also the best way to interact with others. Because at the end of the day, we're on one globe. And if you really want to be big, if you really want to be someone substantial in life, at some point in your business career, you're going to need to interact with them. So for me, the biggest gift that I can give to my kids is being able to expose them to an environment that allows for them to relate with anyone in the world. I think that's superpower.
nice.
Good.
And Alex, for you, can I ask, in terms of like from a professional, but even a personal point of view, like I think it's a two-part question. If you have 24 hours in a day and you do whatever you watch, what you want to do, what do you actually get up to? And also, what drives you professionally to keep getting up every day and actually go to work? Like, what is it that you're trying to achieve in the long run?
Answer to the first question is train, bri with family, and this.
Okay.
I would
Like
do
a, like
like
a,
3 interviews a day because I love learning from people. Honestly, this podcast has, I mean, T said it to me the other day. We cannot even imagine a life without it now that we've started doing it. And if I think about last night, we were up at midnight to speak to someone in Australia, and it didn't even feel like effort. It was just, yeah, of course we're going to do this. I mean, this is the opportunity, so we'll make it happen. Second
Mm,
thing with what motivates me to keep growing and learning as a professional. Honestly, I am a lifelong learner. I love learning. And it's something that I apply in my personal and my professional life. So like one of my hobbies is camping. And
okay.
the reason why it's one of my favorite hobbies is because we have a family farm and I love nature. And there's just something about being by yourself in the bush, how it tests you. Um, and I'm constantly trying to learn how to be a better camper. It's such a funny thing to say. I think people will be like, why are you so passionate about it? But like I literally just did research last week on how to pick a better camping spot so that the wind doesn't hit the tent and etc. 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 So I have the same philosophy with my professional life as well. It's like I want to be a better, not just a better accountant, but like a better working professional, a better leader, a better colleague. Um, I also want to be a CEO one day. I want to be a C-suite guy. So that's my thing is like the challenge also demands learning. I'm always jumping to different industries. When I was doing audit, I was working on mining and insurance. I also quit my job and I did a complete 180 where I was working in a non-financial role, something that was a bit of like a client relationship sales hybrid, and it took me outside of my comfort zone. I kind of had to learn with principles instead of technical knowledge because no one cared that I'd spent the last 7 years learning accounting because I wasn't doing accounting. So I would say that's my primary driver is like I always want a new challenge. I always want to grow. Like you, I don't want to be the same person that I was yesterday.
Mm,
That's my answer.
beautiful. Oh, that's cool.
Sure. Good one. And Karabo, I'd love to know your answer to the question that you just asked Alex. What drives you up? And if you could take in a 24-hour day, what
24 a day, love it. So 24 a day has to start off with like a training session. So you know me, T. So T knows that I train twice a day. I'm in the gym all the time. So I start off my day with a lot of cardio. Not running. I'm not like you are a runner. You fit to run. I walk around. So if you're gonna take me on a hike, let's start to do that. So it'll be possibly starting it off possibly with like a nice cardio morning, and then T and I will probably tee off somewhere like Irene, have a quick round, and then come home, and then I'll go to gym. So I like to spend it more outdoors, more actively, you know. So about 20,000 a day, gym, golf, gym again, and then spend time with my partner or with my mom and just be chilling. So I'm not big on like the going out thing, the club kind of a thing as well. It's not really what I like to do. So that's what if I have 25 like what I would really spend my time doing as well. The second question was professionally. So professionally, it's actually quite crazy. I foresee myself again going back to the financial training thing that we generally do have. So when I was in varsity, we developed an algorithm that we still run till this day, but for years, and we invested a lot of money into it as well. It just basically allows for automatic trading on financial markets and with different indicators, commodities, in the indices, etc. Runs till this day. Now it's the case of, Alex, maybe meeting up with someone like yourself and how does compliance work, right? And how do we get that regulated, etc. So that's what I see myself in about 5, 10 years time. But right now, it's about building those networks that I have. I mean, I remember meeting as well with one of my clients at the time. He was the former COO at Allen Gray, right? And I still talk to him. His name is Mr. Fury. We still chat to this day, so a guy like that is what I want to have on my books and how I run things as well. So those are pretty cool things I see myself doing in a couple of years. But definitely so far so good, and I love what I do, and I'm gonna keep doing what I love.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Shucks. So yeah, I think this is a perfect place to wrap it up. So much for making time to share your golden wisdom with us. It was so enlightening, and I feel so blessed to have started my morning like this.
No, this was Tina, this was too cool, man. Thank you.
This is going to be more time to accept our invites in the episodes to come.
Without a doubt, man. Without a doubt. I'm
Alex,
automatically in.
Sorry, gents, but this last little bit, there was a little bit of a frequency disruption there. But the one thing I wanted to say, 45 minutes, T, okay? This pod was, I called it right at the start. I said, there's no way it's going to be 45 minutes.
Yeah, for sure.
But Karabo, you are wise beyond your years, my friend. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. I know it's going to serve somebody that listens to this. And yeah, definitely not the last time that we'll have you on the show. So very excited to watch your journey and where you're going to go with everything. And thank you so much for your time, my man.
No, it's for you guys, man. Thanks for the invitation. Yeah. It's been absolutely great. Please shout next time. I'm really, really keen. And if you have someone else that will be, someone, who's in finance or some really cool guest, I'd love to be part of the actual panel just to pick their brains as well. So, but thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it. And have a great Saturday.
100%. All right, everyone.
No, awesome. And this before you guys wrap up, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can wrap it up. Alex, you can wrap it up. I'll chat you guys after this, but we can wrap up. So thanks for listening. Over to you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.